Hello and welcome back to Toby Jones Talks Music, where we do exactly what it says on the tin. I am Toby Jones, and today we are talking about country music. You will have seen from the title if you clicked on the video. We are talking about one of these essential sets. I've talked about a couple of these on the channel before. Haven't bought one for a while, but I have recently bought this Essential Kenny Rogers, a free CD set. But before we look at the CD itself, I want to turn this video into somewhat of a history. Not of Kenny Rogers himself, but my history with Kenny Rogers and his music. So, really, it all started in 2020 in earnest. But before that, and I'm glad I researched this because I had my own idea in my head of how I came to know Kenny Rogers' music, but wasn't 100% sure of it. So I went and researched and looked at what I'd listened to in the past, etc, etc. And I actually found that my first encounter with Kenny Rogers' music was on the Engelbert Humperdinck duet album called Engelbert Calling, which my good friend Joe is a fan of Engelbert and recommended this album, etc, etc. Some good duets on there. And one of the ones I did enjoy was She Believes in Me, featuring Kenny Rogers. Now, I don't think before that, in 2018, I'd heard any Kenny Rogers before. So after listening to that, I heard a couple of Kenny's tracks, Ruby Don't Take Your Love to Town, Coward of the County, Lucille. But generally beyond that, I didn't explore much more. And it's a little bit sombre in how I came to discover Kenny Rogers, and really the motivation behind it was, unfortunately, Kenny Rogers passed away in March of 2020. Well, if we all remember that month of March 2020, nearly 5 years ago now, that was when the world shut down and went into lockdown. So it provided myself, along with a lot of other people, the opportunity to listen to a lot more music and really discover artists that perhaps I hadn't discovered before. And one of those was Kenny Rogers. So I do say that during the lockdown, I discovered him to an extent, maybe sort of another 5-10 of his tracks. But again, along with other stuff I was dipping into at the time, I was buying a lot of other vinyl and records and other stuff by other artists. It wasn't massive that I got into Kenny Rogers, but nevertheless, I kind of discovered a few more songs, understood a few more of his greatest hits, and liked the stuff. This channel is mostly rock-centric, but I do like country music. I've got an affinity for country music back to my younger days. I'm still young, hopefully. But back in my younger days, my grandparents loved country music, the likes of Johnny Cash and Charlie Pride and Marty Robbins, Frankie Lane, etc, etc. So Kenny Rogers does fit this mould to an extent. When I really got into Kenny Rogers in earnest, flappy finger, is in October 2020 when I bought a few of his records on a very good deal. So I'll show some of these now that I bought on this deal, and this was really at a time when I was buying a lot of vinyl. And in some ways I do regret buying some of this stuff now, but the Kenny Rogers stuff, not so much. I'm fine with it, particularly given that this was one of these deals that I think I got 8 records for $7.99 or $9.99 or something like that. It was a bundle on eBay, and it consisted mostly of greatest hits sets. There are a few that have gone in the interim because it was just duplicated stuff that I didn't need. But in this set, you had his second solo album, as you can see, including the #1 top hit Lucille, called Kenny Rogers. Another one of his albums called Kenny. I think this was released in 1979, following The Gambler and Love or Something Like It. And then there were, as I say, some compilations in here. The ones I've still got are the Star Collection, and this is actually quite important in that this introduced me early on to some of his first edition songs. So for those of you who don't know Kenny Rogers all that well, Kenny Rogers, before going solo, in the late 60s, early 70s, had a group called, as you can see there, Kenny Rogers and the First Edition, and it was the group that he first recorded Ruby Don't Take Your Love to Town with, as well as some other really good songs, but that was really the most well-known track from that group. And I've always thought, just a side note, that woman there, I don't know who she is, she's got a bit of a look of Karen Carpenter. Can never get away from that. There were a few other compilations as well. I've got 3 of them still. I think there was a German compilation and something else. I can't quite recall what the last one was. But you had a compilation called Lady. I think this was basically a driving force for the aforementioned song. A song written by Lionel Richie, which was famous for Kenny Rogers, and featured a lot of his most popular tracks from the years beforehand. We then got the Kenny Rogers Singles album. And again, there's a fair amount of overlap between these albums. And then finally, a bit of a later one. This was mid-80s, so I think this one has got some of his later tracks on it. Yeah, a couple from 83, a couple from 81. And that is the Kenny Rogers Story, 20 Golden Greats. So there is some overlap with those albums, but with how cheap they are, I'm fine to keep them in my collection. After getting those records in early 2021, I bought and read Kenny Rogers' autobiography, Look or Something Like It, which is a play on words on this album here, and one of the tracks from it, Kenny Rogers' Love or Something Like It. The book was called, as I say, Look or Something Like It. And I really enjoyed that book. I haven't got that book to show you because in one of my biggest life regrets, genuinely, I sold that book. Don't know why. Well, ever since I've sold that book, pretty much every book I've read, bar a couple, I've kept them all because I might, particularly when it comes to music books, might refer back to them in the future. I do the same with magazines, music magazines. If they've got an article or a feature on an album that I quite like, I can go back to that for information. I know we've got the internet these days, but obviously you can't access all these things on the internet. And that Kenny Rogers autobiography, I do regret getting rid of that because I do remember a couple of things from my mind that were in that autobiography, but not a lot, and it would be nice to revisit maybe just certain bits of that autobiography to go, okay, right, that's what was happening here and all the rest of it, because Wikipedia, etc., doesn't have it from Kenny's point of view, and also isn't the most comprehensive on Kenny Rogers' life. So I might pick that book back up at some stage. It wasn't a cheap one. I think I paid £10 or £12 for it. It certainly wasn't a charity shop purchase, but nevertheless, you live and learn. After this, though, I picked up a few more of his albums on LP. I've already shown one of those I got from a charity shop, Love or Something Like It. This is a good album. We then had somewhat of a concept album, which I bought, and I think is there a poster in here, or is it just a lyric sheet? Yeah, here we go. Put this one up on the bedroom wall, ladies and gents. Fantastic. So there's a poster on the back and then a lyric sheet on the front. So that's quite a nice addition to this Gideon album, which is, as I say, something of a concept album. The most known track from this is his duet with Kim Carnes, Don't Fall in Love with a Dreamer. I have to say I'm not mad about this album, quite apart from the duet. But as I say, I've only maybe listened to it once or twice, so I might have to give it another try. And then this one, Eyes That See in the Dark, is a mid-80s effort, 1983. It does feature his duet with Dolly Parton, Islands in the Stream. And there was a fair amount of involvement you can see there from Dolly and Barry Gibb on this album. And then finally, which is also relevant to Kenny Rogers' career, I've also got this, Kenny Rogers' 10 Years of Gold. So this is yet another compilation. However, this does feature 10 tracks, as you can see on the front. Half of them are re-recordings from the first edition era. So he re-recorded Ruby Don't Take Your Love to Town, Just Dropped In, Reuben James, But You Know I Love You, and Something's Burning. So he re-recorded all of those tracks. Bear that in mind in a minute for the 10 Years of Gold album. I then, at this sort of time, I did transition over to CD in the main, and I picked up a double album called the Orange Collection. It wasn't great. It certainly wasn't his greatest hits. It was it was pretty much all covers bar a couple, and that since has gone back to the charity shop. However, before getting this essential set, I did pick up fairly recently, and I was delighted with this, probably his best compilation album. And that is the very best of Kenny Rogers' Daytime Friends. It's 20 tracks, and generally speaking, features most of the things you'd want out of this album. So, that brings me back to the essential sets, and just to kind of go a little bit backwards, I talked about the Orange Collection just then, and there were a hell of a lot of covers on that album. Now, maybe I should have read the back cover before buying that, but it is difficult to know sometimes, particularly if you don't know the artist massively in earnest. And I thought, well, this could be some of his later tracks. There were some covers in there, but I thought I'll give it a try for how cheap it is. Maybe that was one of the more obvious ones. However, the essential sets are always a hallmark of quality, because the problem is, particularly with country music, I find this a problem. There are a lot of re-recorded compilations out there, and poorer quality recordings and stuff I don't really want, particularly when it's an artist that just warrants a compilation. So I've got a few as an example here. First off, I'll touch on Kenny Rogers, actually. Funnily enough, I've got these 3 compilations, so the Daytime Friends Essential and this, in pretty quick time, and I can't speak for this yet because I haven't listened to it, but this is Kenny Rogers and first edition, 26 tracks from Kenny Rogers and the first edition, which really for me, because I enjoyed this, I'm not going to find it out, but you know which one I was talking about with the first edition, because I enjoyed that album, I thought, oh, this could be an extension of that. Haven't listened to it yet, but I could be wrong, but I feel like in my mind these could be poorer quality recordings, maybe re-recordings, don't know, because they're with the first edition, possibly not, but the problem you do get is possibly the likes of these. So first off, I touched on Frankie Lane earlier. I've been after a CD compilation of his for a while, so I went and bought this. Frankie Lane, I believe, 20 all-time greats. This from Prism Leisure, all re-recordings. So I was a bit frustrated when I got that. However, not long after I did pick this up, which is indeed the real deal. Frankie Lane Hits. It was a big album back in about 2011. It sold quite a lot over here in the UK. Another one that I'm a bit sceptical again, haven't listened to yet, is Billie Holiday, That Old Devil Called Love. Again, another one that was manufactured and distributed by Prism Leisure. The back cover's very low quality, and it does make me a little bit nervous that this is re-recorded tracks. It does say 24 original classics, which, fingers crossed. But when you want a compilation, back to the main point, the essential sets are really a hallmark of quality, because I have bought a fair few of these before and reviewed them on the channel. So just a reminder of those. Probably favourite band of all time, Essential Thin Lizzy, Essential Diana Ross and the Supremes, and also the Human League Essential. There's a rival series to the Essential series, which is just as good as its quality. I don't know if it's a rival or not, but these are by Spectrum Music, the Essential sets. And then we have the gold sets, which are from Demon Music Group, marketed by Crimson Production. I've got a few of these as well. These are pretty much the same sort of idea. So we've got T-Rex Gold, Gene Pitney Gold, and Jim Reeves Gold. Again, all very similar, 3 CD sets. I have to say, they're all pretty good. So, when I saw the Essential Kenny Rogers CD, my eyes lit up. I have to say, I didn't even know that this existed, because those 3 Essential sets, I bought them a fair while ago, all out of supermarkets, the local Asda probably, and I hadn't thought much of it since, and I certainly didn't think Kenny Rogers would be somebody who would have an Essential album. So I actually found this in a charity shop. It was the start of January this year, and to give a little bit of a sob story to all this fact, I was feeling a little bit down, not because it was the start of January, but because at the end of December, the last few days of the year, I managed to get this ear blocked. Couldn't hear out of it at all. It was completely blocked. I love my music, as you well know from here. I like films, pretty much anything that involves sound. So I was struggling. I couldn't really listen to music, and, well, I thought, I'm going to go out for a couple of hours on the Saturday morning. I'd just gone back to work as well after the Christmas break, so, oh, no. But yeah, I went out on that Saturday morning, went up the local town, visited the local charity shops, couldn't find anything. I thought, this is going to be a wasted trip again. But then I went in the British Heart Foundation, which is a shop I don't go in very often because the prices are generally quite expensive compared to other charity shops. They'd got a 50% sale on, and I bought a Blu-ray for £1, which I was delighted at. If you're interested, it was Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And while flicking through the racks, I saw this for £1. And I have to say, I was really took back, because I didn't expect at all that an Essential set would be done from Kenny Rogers music. I don't know why, I just didn't feel like he was the sort of artist that would be featured on that. Maybe more so the likes of Gold, particularly when you got Jim Reeves and Gene Pitney on it, but I was surprised that he was on this set. Engelbert Humperdinck's had one before, so you can kind of see the musical link to an extent, but I was delighted when I picked this up, because I thought, right, I've got this, Daytime Friends, it's 20 tracks. This one is significantly longer than that, and actually, just as a touching point, particularly some of the Essential sets, the Thin Lizzy one and the Diana Ross one, not so much, but The Human League one has got 12, 14, 41 tracks only. Oh, diddums. Only 41 tracks. But my point is that generally these compilations usually have, say, 20 tracks each CD. This one has got 22 on disc 1, 21 on disc 2, and 24 on disc 3. So you're getting 67 Kenny Rogers tracks here. So it is good value for money. Even for a fiver, for a free CD set, it is very, very cheap. So I was delighted to see that. I had a look on Discogs because I don't know how many essential sets there are now. It's been a couple of years since I bought those. And according to Discogs, there are 24. There might be some more that haven't been added, but it's not a massive set. So again, for Kenny Rogers to be in this collection is a surprise to me. So, what did I think? Well, after my ear was fixed, you'll be glad to know, the week after, I worked from home from work on a Wednesday, so listened to all 3 CDs while working from home. Can't say that was too recommended, because in the end, I like Kenny Rogers, not one of my favourite artists, but I like him. But 3 CDs ended up being a little bit overkill in the end, but I did definitely get something from it. You might see on the top right of the screen or wherever, I've done a spreadsheet, because I love an Excel spreadsheet, but what I'm trying to work out is that obviously I've got all those vinyl records down there that you've seen. I've got the compilation disc. So I was trying to work out, well, a lot of those I've got are late 70s. They're his first albums, and I don't know a lot of his 80s stuff. So I was interested, what percentage of all this is from the earlier stuff and what's from the late stuff? Well, as you'll see in the corner there, there is a hell of a lot of stuff front-loaded from his early career, if you like, the 70s stuff. So going up to 1979, 40 of these tracks are from that period, and pretty much all of it, barring 3 tracks, are from albums from the first edition all the way up to We've Got Tonight from 1983. 64 of the 67 tracks are there. There are 3 tracks from his 2006 album Water and Bridges, but apart from that, a lot of this is loaded towards his early-ish career, if you can call it that, which is a bit of a shame to an extent, because I would have liked to have maybe heard a couple of tracks which are from his later albums. But even so, I have to say, the 3 albums I haven't heard at all, Share Your Love from 81, Love Will Turn You Around from 82, and We've Got Tonight from 83, apart from the title song, which has been on several compilations. There's 15 tracks from this that are from those albums, and you'd hope that they'd cherry pick the best songs. I have to say, I've only listened to this once, so I can't really give my opinion on those tracks, and if you read them out to me, I'd have no idea what they were. But I have to say, for one thing, it's a very good expansion to that 1 CD set, because generally that's just his hits and that's it. The problem you do get with these is that, as I said earlier, it is somewhat a little bit overkill. But I feel like there isn't really a lot more to get other than this. There are a lot of his duets with Dottie West in here as well. Very nice presentation. You can see 6 of the albums which are heavily featured in this here on that little slip of the case. And then the discs, nothing special. There's a red, a black, and a green. And again, some of these sets have been quite interesting in their design. You know, you've got the Human League with their logo, and what I did like most, what was the Diana Ross one? Nothing massively special. I did like the fact that the Thin Lizzy sets kind of represented all of their different labels over time. I did like that very, very much. But these are not as exciting as that, really, but nevertheless, they do the job. So again, it's a very good expansion. Very good expansion to that greatest hits set, that Daytime Friends set. I'm glad I've got it. As I say, it is a little bit overkill when it comes to listening to all at once, but really, again, this is probably all you'd want. You'd probably pick a couple of tracks here and there to listen to. The 2 tracks which I've really got on with, which I hadn't heard before, are from his 2006 album Water and Bridges. So we've got The Last 10 Years, brackets Superman, and I Can't Unlove You from disc 3. And that's brought me on to a point, actually, that I didn't think I'd be talking about, which does annoy me slightly with these sets, that they aren't in chronological order at all. It's all over the place. The first, I guess, half of disc 1 are probably his biggest hits, but like I've just discussed, so the 2006 album, you've got 1 track on disc 2, track 18, and then the last one is disc 3, track 20, And I mean, a couple of tracks before that, you've got a track from Love or Something Like It. On the last 10 years, I don't know what a lot of these I have to say, but if I just go to the left of my sheet, yeah, so you've got the last 10 years Superman, and then after that you go back to We've Got Tonight, then Daytime Friends, then Gideon in terms of albums. So it is a bit all over the place, but particularly from a front-loading perspective of his singles and his hits, I do get it to an extent, but it's a little bit frustrating. All I can say is I could adapt it in iTunes to go chronologically. Would I want to do that? Maybe only with the stuff I haven't heard, because if you want to ultimately, if you want to hear the tracks from one album, so if I wanted to listen to everything from Love or Something Like It, I just put the needle down on this, don't I? But particularly with country music, the good thing about these sets is that a lot of these aren't really available on CD or readily available on CD. And equally, I'm not that much of a Kenny Rogers fan to go and buy up all of his CD collection. From a finance perspective, it doesn't really make sense to me. Sure, if I see an album out in the wild for a couple of pounds, I'll get it, but I'm not going to buy everything. So this probably does cover all bases for what I need as a Kenny Rogers fan. Now, for most people, maybe this would cover it. And I was quite happy with this before I got the Essential set. But this is a nice little bonus. And would I have listened to those two tracks had I not listened to this compilation? No, probably not. And there are potentially 15 other tracks from the 380s albums I've mentioned. 14 minus We've Got Tonight, which I already know, the title track. So, all in all, I'm very pleased with my purchase. It was only £1. I think these were kind of £5 or £6 when they first came out in supermarkets or wherever they were distributed online. You might be able to get a cheap copy on eBay possibly or somewhere like that. But if you are a Kenny Rogers fan and maybe you'd want to expand your collection in some way, I would recommend this, particularly at the price point. All of the Essential sets, even if you're kind of like, I only know a couple of their tracks. So when you look at somebody like, I don't know, Jim Reeves, I've already got the best of Jim Reeves set, but that's a 1 CD set. This expands on that. Same goes for Gene Pitney. I haven't actually got a CD set of his, and he was another one that I did buy a fat box set of Gene Pitney's tracks, and it wasn't the best selection. These, although this is the gold selection now, you know that you're going to get a good deal with these. So the gold, the Essential sets, they're all worth buying, and if I see one in the wild, even if it's an artist that I only like a couple of tracks of, I will pick it up. They are probably, from a compilation perspective, one of the best things going out there. So a big thumbs up to the creators, the curators of Gold, Essential. Those two sets are really good, and whenever I pick any up, I'll keep singing their praises in terms of, you know, bringing the art, like the likes of Kenny Rogers, back to us. You can stream, of course you can stream, but the fact that you can get this 3D set, that would be something different. If you can get this free CD set, I would totally recommend it. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. That's my thoughts on the Kenny Rogers Essential set. Is it worth buying? Yes. Should you go and buy it now? Yes. Do I recommend it? Yes. All the good things about it. As I say, a few nitpickety things, but to be honest, the music's all there in a fashion, so that really is all that matters, particularly for the price point. I think if you were paying a lot more for this, yeah, you would maybe expect a bit more detail, a booklet possibly, and, you know, a listing of all the albums that the tracks are from. Not what I've had to do with that spreadsheet, but at the price point, I don't mind doing a little bit of legwork to make it work for me personally, but I think I'm probably just a bit nitpickety in all of those things. But as I say, if you've enjoyed it, leave a like down below. Comment your thoughts. I'd love to hear your stories about Kenny Rogers. Have you even seen him live? Have you been lucky enough to do that? What is your history of Kenny Rogers? I'd love to hear it. And any other country music, and in fact, any other music you've been listening to lately, whether it's related or unrelated, I'd love to hear it down below. Make sure to subscribe for more music content, and make sure as well, if you're interested in film, to go over to my film channel. Who knows, there might be a review of The Gambler or Six Pack or one of the films that Kenny Rogers has been in Sundays. Who knows, it might happen at some point. I haven't watched those films yet, but they are on the list. Maybe a little bit further down on the list, because the likes of Coward of the County, I'm not sure they're going to be great watches, but to sit and watch Kenny Rogers for a couple of hours, who can complain about that? I hope you have a nice rest of your day. I've been Toby Jones from Toby Jones Talks Music, and until the next time, I will see you all later on. Goodbye for now.